All right, hello everybody. It is Wednesday, March 4th or March 5th for those of you who are on the other side of the planet. You are here for how to build an eBay side hustle with AI in one weekend. My name is Albert. I'm the founder of Albert's List. We're a job search, side hustle, and AI education organization helping you become the most resilient professional you can possibly be. In this day of higher prices that keep going higher, it's evident that we all need a side hustle to just help make our ends meet or even just find a way to get to more freedom. And one of these ways is basically by looking at the things that you already have around you in your own home that you can sell on eBay. And so, with that, a lot of people are also noting that because things are more expensive, they're also looking to buy things at lower prices. And sometimes gently and nicely used items are a great way to get folks into the market or just into buying things that they still need but don't want to pay high prices for. So, to get this whole thing started, I'm bringing in my friend Charles Costa, who's the founder of resellingguide.ai, who has significant experience selling in the eBay space, selling clothing and other items at his store, Bargain Bin 650. He's going
Mhm.
to show you today how you can get started on eBay, some of the keys and secrets to mastering the platform, and also give you an opportunity to start on your journey. Charles, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you. Happy to be here. So to start off, I'm Charles. I'm the creator of Reselling Guide AI. I'm also a senior content strategist in the customer experience division at eBay. And I've been with the company since March 2020. Literally, my start date was the day California shut down and the office closed. But since 2021, I have been reselling on the platform. I also sell a little on Depop, Poshmark, Macari, and I've dabbled in other sites, but those are really my main drivers. eBay is the main source of my sales, however. And today I mainly sell men's and women's clothing and accessories. I source from estate sales, thrift stores, and sometimes even when I'm shopping, if something catches my eye, I might buy it. And when I first started, I originally was selling glassware and other hard goods, but shifted to clothing because it's a lot easier to store and ship. And you don't have to worry about bubble wrap and boxes and having a lot of storage space. Ultimately, with reselling, there's no right or wrong answer on what you should sell. It's really figuring out what works for you. Before I really get into the presentation, I just have two quick points. The first thing is that Reselling Guide AI is an independent project through MPAD Holdings, LLC. It is not affiliated with or endorsed by eBay, and everything shared in this webinar is my own perspective. Second, I do have the chat open, so feel free to type in any questions while I'm presenting. I'll try answering them as best as I can. I know this is a bit of information, and I do want this presentation to provide the most value. So definitely don't be afraid to ask any questions. And now I'm going to go into how I use AI to make reselling smarter, faster, and less stressful. Real tools, real examples, and practical stuff you can use right away. First off, I want to go into why now is a great time to pick up reselling. First, tariffs. New goods are getting more expensive, and when retail prices go up, buyers start looking for alternatives. And the biggest alternative to new goods is secondhand. It's not bad news for you, it's opportunity. More buyers are entering the resale market than ever before, and they're looking for exactly what you might have sitting in your closet. Speaking of which, think about that gift you got last holiday that wasn't quite right. The thing you smiled and thanked the person for, but it's just been collecting dust in a drawer or in your closet. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Um, That's the item they got that you didn't like. It's not clutter, it's potentially inventory. And with online reselling, you can turn that into cash, sometimes even more than the person who what they paid for it. The demand is there. Secondhand has gone mainstream, and it's no longer just thrift store regulars. People want quality goods without retail prices. They also want sustainable choices. And with online reselling, it's easier than ever to connect to buyers across the globe and even wherever they might be. And I'm not just talking about secondhand clothing, electronics, home goods, collectibles, books, vintage items, pretty much anything you can think of, there's going to be a market for it. The question is whether you're going to meet the buyers where they are. That's the opportunity, but here's the problem. Reselling sounds simple. You find stuff, you list it, and you profit. Except when you actually try to do it, you run into walls. I have a quick question for the chat. Type me if you've ever found something you thought might be worth money, but you couldn't figure out what it was or what to price it at. Just drop it in the chat if that's ever happened to you. So I do see a couple of responses. And even for me, I've been reselling for a bit and it's always a learning experience. You're not going to know, you can't just memorize everything and know pricing right off the bat. That's why AI is such a great tool for this. You can now find something at the thrift store or something at home you're thinking of selling, and you're wondering, is it worth anything, but you're not sure. Then you spend 20 minutes on your phone typing into Google, is this something worth typing in the item model, the describing the design, and so on. And Google, ultimately, you find tons of dupes or similar items, but you don't know exactly, is this the right item that's spot on? And for me personally, when I resell clothing, I do see in the chat clothing is the hardest. A lot of times I'll pick up shirts and they have designs and I use Google Lens and it may show something. It may show one shirt, a Gucci, for example, worth $500 and that dupe from Walmart or Target and it sells for $5. And ultimately with reselling, you need to be very precise about what you're doing. So if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know exactly what the item is, you can list it, take a chance, and then it sells. But then you get a message from the buyer and they say, this isn't what I ordered. I want a refund. And then your stomach drops. You're wondering, did I miss something? Was there a flaw in the item? And now you're out the item and the money, and it's not a positive feeling. The fear of getting burned is what stops most people from reselling than anything else. It's definitely also a bit of a hustle, but ultimately finding your groove in reselling, once you hit your groove and you start figuring out what works for you, it all becomes more manageable. And this is where AI comes in. It's not replacing your judgment, it gives you leverage. Knowledge that used to take years to build, such as going back to clothing, for example, because that's something I mainly sell, I may read up on different types of fabrics, different types of patterns. So I know how to describe the item when listing, but ultimately I can't memorize every model or every design of Ralph Lauren or Gucci or so on. And with AI, even with that general experience, I can now augment it and snap a picture of a shirt and instantly have an answer on, is this something that's right for my business? And so here's the workflow I use when processing inventory. It's 5 steps and very high level. There's identify the item to understand what I'm looking at, evaluate the condition, catch any flaws that may lead the buyer to open a return. Research comps, which is the term used to describe comparing, seeing what's sold on the marketplace and determining, is this a good price? Can I get a good margin from this item? Then it's a matter of drafting the listing that's accurate and optimized for selling, and then posting the listing, and if needed, tweaking later on to adding optimizations. All of these sound simple on the surface, but there's hidden complexity. Oh, sorry. Sorry about the slides. It seems like PowerPoint is a bit wonky right now. Now, all of these steps I just mentioned, they each have a bit of nuance to them. Identifying the item isn't just figuring out what is the shirt? Is it Ralph Lauren? Is it Gucci? Is it Marmot? You also need to consider the era, the specific model, the details, and so on. Like a modern day champion shirt may sell for $20, for example, but a vintage single stitch champion shirt from the 1980s might sell for $100 or $200. And a lot of the reselling market right now, vintage is vogue. And Abercrombie and Fitch, for example, modern Abercrombie may not fetch a lot of money, but if you know what older Abercrombie from the 90s looks like, then you can snatch that up at a low price and flip it for hundreds of dollars. Ultimately, and with listing items, condition isn't just a question of does the item look okay? It's also knowing what the buyers in that category complain about. So if I'm a coin collector, I guess coin collecting might not be the best example, but like trading cards is something I'm a little more familiar with. So for trading cards, say you have a Charizard Pokemon card and there's a little nick on the corner. And for you personally, you might not care that much about that little nick because you're not a hardcore collector. But when you go on eBay and if you list the trading card with that flaw and you don't call it out and someone purchases the card, if they're a hardcore collector, they're gonna get that item and they're gonna be like, I bought this, it's listed as good, but there's this major flaw. So when you're listing items, you don't just look at it from what you think of the item. You also need to understand the mindset of the individual and who you're selling to. And before AI, all of this took years of trial and error. I ended up getting many returns where people said, I didn't realize this glass bowl had a chip, or this shirt is too small because you didn't measure it correctly, and so on. Underpricing also is another thing. And even like just buying inventory that sat and never sold. It used to be a lot of trial and error because doing all that research in advance wasn't, you could do some, but there was still a bit of gut instinct, which isn't always as accurate. And AI, as I mentioned, it compresses the learning curve. It doesn't replace the experience, but gives you a shortcut to the knowledge that you would normally get with experience. And what I'm showing today is the concept of using AI. In my course, which I'll go into later, I go deep into the thinking of each step, provide worksheets to help you build your own approach, and show you how to adapt it to whatever you're selling. But now we'll get into the live demo. And I'm just going to shuffle a few things on my screen. So for context right now, what I have open is highbid.com. This is a website I've occasionally used to purchase inventory, and it's kind of like an eBay for auctioneers. So all these different auction houses will do estate sales and things like that. And they'll list each estate sale has its own auction, and that's where you can bid on everything. I'm This website is a bit tricky because every auction house has their own policies, but I'm highlighting it here because they have a lot of inventory that we can go through. And before we go on in the chat, I'm curious, what is one category of item that you're most interested in selling? Clothing, electronics, vintage items, or whatever it is, just drop it in. And so moving on to, I see clothing, electronics, kid stuff, clothing, purses, jewelry, good options. Tools. Tools are definitely big sellers. I know on Facebook Marketplace, collectibles, World War memorabilia. Hybrid actually is great for collectibles because a lot of the estate sales are in I think a lot of the auctions on Hybrid tend to be in the Midwest, or it also is globally, but I have seen a lot of antiques and things of that sort. And I guess just to start off, let's do collectibles and let's say, let's do railroad Amtrak sign, for example. And I will do anywhere or So right now I just typed in a query and we can see there's a bunch of different listings on railroad signs. Now thank you, Mike. No, seeing Amtrak. I figured that after. But moving on, I guess to start off, what we can do is let's say you're at an estate sale, you're looking for collectibles, and you see this American Flyer sign, for example, and you're not sure, is this really something worth picking up and paying, let's say $10 or whatever it might be? So I have right here Claude, and we're going to just take the pictures. So we're going to save a couple of pictures here. And we are going to go in here. And the prompt I have is I'm just copy pasting it. And I will be providing these prompts after the webinar so you can try them on your own items. The prompt we have is based on this item and its likely condition, what pricing factors should I consider? What's a realistic price range? And what would make this sell at a higher versus lower end on the spectrum? And now we're just going to plug in these images. And I currently am using the plus version of Claude, the $20 model, but this does work with the free version. You can also use ChatGPT and Gemini or pretty much any other AI model. What matters more is the prompt itself and the instructions versus the model. And Claude is going to think for a bit. And you can see right off the bat, Claude says it's porcelain style. So that does have a material impact on the pricing. And it does provide, from the perspective of a buyer, does this fit the criteria that they would be looking for? And it does provide different figures. So it does have the high end spectrum, the lower end, and that does give you a general range on what you can work with. Additionally, Claude does provide a bit of guidance and advice to help you so that if you're fairly new with collectibles or if you just want some additional ideas to bounce off it, it does tell you like here's how to clean it and so on. And then the other thing about AI is it also is extremely helpful with photography. So for the next example, I'm going to jump back and let's do jewelry. So we'll do diamond ring. And let's just choose these rings here. And let's say you're listing your first set of jewelry on eBay and you're just doing a photo of the rings on a table, which is a fairly understandable arrangement. And I will take that image. So what we're going to do now is we are going to ask chat or ask Claude, how can we enhance the photos to improve the buyer appeal? So I have this prompt, which is I'm reselling this item and need to photograph it myself. From the perspective of a professional product photographer, how should I take the pictures to maximize buyer appeal? What angles, lighting, and background work best? The reason I'm using this prompt with diamond rings, for example, is because with a shirt, generally speaking, you put it on the table or the platform, whatever you're using, snap a few photos of the front and back and the tags, and then you move on. With jewelry, you do want to be sure that you're photographing everything meticulously. So there is a bit of a nuance to that. And we're going to have Claude give it a think. And you can see Gemini Claude, it does provide suggestions on the type of lighting, such as having near a window or a light box, trying to avoid shadows. It gives you a tip on the angle, and it also gives suggestions on background. So with reselling at a very high level, white backgrounds or light gray, whether it's clothing or jewelry or pretty much anything relatively small, um, definitely those backgrounds tend to be more appealing. So you can see pretty much all this additional information. Claude is pretty much just saying, taking it from here's a general photo of some rings on a table, and it's really telling you how to make it pop without hiring a professional product photographer. The other prompt I have is going back to the lens of the buyer. And this prompt is helpful, say if you're again the estate sale use case, if you're not familiar with selling jewelry and you inherit this jewelry from a relative, for example, right here we have the prompt looking at this photo, what's lacking that would make a buyer hesitant? And we're going back to Claude and we're saying, tell me this advice as a professional product photographer. What would you do differently to build the confidence and reduce the likelihood of returns? So now we're getting a bit more detailed and we're having Claude now focus the instruction on an objective, which is how do we ensure that we're accurately depicting the item? And you can see here now Claude is providing us with red flags, such as you can see we're not disclosing the carat count. We don't have proof of authenticity. You buyers can't assess quality. This is a bit of a moot point. It's going to be an issue regardless of any type of online sale. But you can see what here Claude is making a few good points of things you may want to add in. And now Claude is providing ways to build trust. It's providing specific points, specific areas of the jewelry where you would want to take those pictures, and so on. And before I move on, I do have a quick question. I want to know in the chat, what's something that you own that you've been meaning to sell, but you haven't gotten around to it? Clothes, shoes, purses, books, clothes, because I do, it's not specifically AI, but something I will call out because I do see in the chat someone said measurements is a difficult thing. If you look up reseller ruler, this is actually what I use on eBay and for all my online marketplaces. And this isn't the exact brand, but it's similar concept. And it's a ruler with two rulers stacked together, so you can get the length and width of of the article of clothing in one shot. So definitely check out Reseller Ruler. It does make life a lot easier. Back to the chat, I do see artwork also, remote control golf cart. Um, so I guess let's do for the next prompt, we are going to focus on drafting a product description that's optimized for the buyer interest. And I'll quickly touch on clothing because I do see that did come up a bit in the chat. So let's just do polo shirts and we'll do Ralph Lauren. And so this is a use case where I frequently do buy clothes in lots. So I often do look at auctions where they have multiple shirts at once. And something that is extremely helpful with AI is you can have multiple items in a picture and and Claude will provide you with all the relevant information for all of those items at once. So let me just save a few of these pictures. And we will go back to Claude. And I have a prompt, which I'm just pulling up now. Does eBay determine the shipping amount for you? The short answer is that with eBay, you do have different options. You can do flat rate, which is you set one rate for shipping across the board. And there also is calculated shipping. I generally do use the calculated shipping option. And what that means is eBay will, you enter, when you list the item, you tell eBay how big the box is that you're shipping. So you tell eBay for a shirt, for example, a 12 inch by 12 inch poly mailer, which is a plastic shipping bag. And you just tell eBay it's going to be 8 pounds or 8 ounces. And then eBay, like if I go eBay, for example, right now, and I just click this watch here. And this is going to be free shipping, of course. But let's see if This one is not free shipping. So eBay will show shipping in the listing. And right here, you can see it as $29.99. If I were in a different city, like if I were in New York right now, it would show a different amount. So eBay does do the calculation for you if you choose that option. Going back to the listing draft creation. What I have is a prompt here, and it is draft a product description for this item that highlights the key selling points while accurately disclosing any condition issues. And most important for this, we are telling Claude to be honest and to set accurate expectations because going back to the point about item condition, I actually had a shirt that just got returned. I listed it as excellent, but there was a little fading on the color, and the buyer returned the item saying that the condition was not excellent. It was a mistake on my end, and I ultimately chalked it up, but it does go back to the point that with listing items, it's better to under promise and over deliver versus over promise and under deliver. And right now, this use case is actually, we have a few different shirts, and we're going to change this prompt to be draft draft product descriptions for these shirts. Ultimately, when doing this in a real listing, I would provide more photos to Claude to make sure everything is absolutely accurate. And I do touch on this a bit more in the course, but for the general overview, you can get a general idea of what's going on. And you can see here, I just took a photo of, it looks like it's 5, 6 shirts. And now Claude, it did provide, here's the detailed listing for the color block, here's the floral tropical shirt, and then it does provide a listing description if I were to sell the shirts as a lot. And you can also even, going back to earlier examples where we did provide additional detail to Claude, a lot of this prompting success is iterative. So I'm just going over very high level, firing through to show what is possible. But in a real world situation, I would probably now take this answer from Claude and I would say, I'm selling, looking to sell the Depop. What? So now we're going beyond getting the general description and we're asking Claude, how do we consider the nuances across platforms? And you can see here Depop and eBay provides a general competitive analysis. I see in the chat, you wouldn't ask it what the general price of each shirt size. So I guess my understanding of that, not size, price, what the price of each shirt is. Yes, I do get into that actually. And let me see, I have a prompt. So we did go through pricing on earlier. Now for these shirts, for example, if I want to know pricing, I would just simply ask, what is the general? So that's a good point about covering price. Something with reselling to also consider is not just price, but also what's called sell-through rate. And that is the length of time it takes for the shirt or the item to sell. So you can have artwork that sits on eBay that the art may sell for $50,000, but it may take a year to sell it. But if you have artwork that's $10, it may sell in a week. So when you're doing reselling, something you want to consider is that balance of pricing and how fast you want to let inventory sit in storage or wherever it might be. But you can see in Claude, we're now asking for the general price, and now you can see Claude does provide Depop estimated pricing, eBay estimated pricing, and you can see it is providing general guidelines on if something is popular. This is something I tend to consider a lot with different brands of clothing. Sometimes it's just easier for me to buy stuff in a lot at the estate sale and then donate some of that stuff to the thrift store and keep some of it for myself for eBay. And ultimately, the main thing I'm looking at is going to be not just price, but time to sell. And I know we're almost hitting the 20 minutes left mark. So I do have a couple of few more prompts we'll quickly go through. And these are focused on common mistakes that are made with resellers. And the first thing is vague and incomplete descriptions. So, for example, with these Ralph Lauren shirts, we may say, these are Ralph Lauren polo shirts and they are size large. And technically, you can list them on the platform, but it's not going to do very well for search optimization and capturing buyer attention. So, this prompt I now have for this item, what specific buyers expect to see in the listing description? What would make them confident enough to purchase without asking questions? And you can see now, now Claude is saying measurements are key, and it's telling you exactly what to measure, how to measure properly, tag information, all of these specific details. Claude is giving it to us front and center. And now something you can even do is, let's say, how about Penguin brand or Gucci? So if you're just listing multiple items, you don't need to keep creating different chats. You can jump from brand to brand in the same chat, and Claude is going to roll with it. And you can see Claude is even giving us advice on how to tell if something is authentic or if it's not, and so on. And then the other prompt, which I did touch on a little earlier, is what factors make the item sell at high end versus low end. That prompt is very important for avoiding the mistake of overpricing or underpricing. Ultimately, eBay, or this is all anecdotal, again, speaking from my opinion, if you're listing items and you're just guessing what price it would be and it's really high, you're not going to do as well in getting traffic because the marketplace they want people to buy the item. So if you're overpricing, they're just going to give someone else the list. They're going to point buyers to a different listing. So definitely that prompt of knowing pricing is very important to consider. I see in the chat the question, do people need to file taxes if eBay doesn't issue a 1099? Obligatory disclaimer, I can't provide tax advice, so this is all purely high level. I will say that my understanding is that you do technically need to report eBay income on your taxes. The difference is that with the 1099-K, the IRS is being sent a document showing the amount that you made. But if you're below the threshold of that, if you're not getting a 1099, the government will not get that form, but you still do have obligations most likely. But it does depend on your tax situation. And the other mistake that commonly comes up with resellers is buying inventory before you know how to evaluate it. And I will jump back to high bid in a moment, but we do have the prompt, which is if I were considering this item to resell, what red flags should make me walk away? What would make this a bad purchase? And this is something I was very guilty of early on because I went on high bid. I'm like, for example, this neighborhood town pump decoration, for example, I would say, oh, this looks cool. Maybe I should sell it. And I would just buy it and then try and sell it. And it would just sit. And then eventually it would go to the thrift store. So now with this prompt, I'm able to do some, I'm able, if an item catches my eye, I don't fully know, is it something that will sell, but it looks cool. I now have that option to get an additional set of eyes on it. And we'll quickly run this prompt. And you can see right off the bat, Claude confirmed that this probably is not good for me. And you can see nothing against the auctioneer. Claude can be incorrect. Maybe this is worth $550, but I'm not a glass expert. And if Claude says it should be under $20, I'm going to trust that advice. The final mistake and the final prompt I'll go over is more focused on maintaining momentum. And the prompt is I just listed this item. What should I do next to build momentum as a new reseller? Give me three concrete actions I can take today. And this is really just going into using AI as a business partner. And you can see now Claude is saying list more items, optimize it by adding carnival glass and measurements and so on. And it also says go out and thrift. So you can see that with AI, it's not just something to do the research and determine if an item is worth selling. It also covers um, business strategy and becoming a better reseller overall. And these prompts, I do build on them as the business strategy. That is something we do cover in the course. I'm going to shuffle my screen again. One moment. Back to PowerPoint, making sure that everyone can see. Okay, perfect. So now that I went over, I provided a lot of information. I know it's a lot to process. So I have this weekend workflow, which is something, this is all the steps or all the information I provided, and it's designed to make it in an actionable series of steps. So you can get started as a reseller, as the name of this webinar applies, over a weekend. Saturday morning, you sweep your closet. Walk through your house with fresh eyes. The jacket you haven't worn in 2 years, electronics in the drawer, the gift that wasn't quite right. Put everything in one spot. Don't overthink it. If you're not using the item, it's a candidate to go to be resold. Saturday afternoon, clean up your items, steam your clothes if needed, set up a simple photo station. And this can just be opening the window, getting natural light, and just using a blank wall or poster board as a background and just take a series of photos of the items all in one session and multiple angles, detailed shots. And as mentioned earlier, you want to photograph the flaws. I do have a question in the chat. Is Facebook Marketplace a better place for selling than reselling? What is your rules of fun? Ultimately, so just going back about what I mentioned earlier in the start of the webinar, there's no right or wrong way to resell, and every marketplace has their strengths and weaknesses. I have used Facebook Marketplace. I personally prefer eBay because it does provide more traffic. eBay, Poshmark also show listings from their sites on Facebook Marketplace. So there is a partnership between the two. At a very high level, however, Facebook Marketplace is really good if you're doing heavy items, like if you're doing, I guess, a set of drills or old appliances or things that are bulky that you can't really ship. Facebook is great for things that require local pickup. I think for anything that can be shipped, and also if you don't want to worry about logistics of meeting people, um, Depop, eBay, Macari, Poshmark, those tend to be a bit better. But ultimately, it depends on what you're selling and what you really prefer for your business. Going back to the weekend workflow for Sunday, this is where you get to leverage AI. Use Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever it is, and you can just take the photos that you took for eBay or the online marketplace, or you can use the app to snap photos in real time and just use the prompts provided to get the answers from AI. And if you can get one listing up, awesome. 5 listings, great. If you're ambitious, do 10. But the key thing about reselling is you learn by doing. And ultimately, that's why one item, it's great if you get it up. But definitely to really get the most of reselling, you do need to try to have multiple things up at once. And then after Sunday, keep the momentum going. Keep an eye on your online marketplace account, be it Facebook, eBay, Poshmark, whatever it is. Keep an eye out for if people message you asking questions. Something that I do cover in the course is how to use AI to help with providing customer service. Buyers tend to be can be very particular depending on the item, but with reselling, it's almost like running a brick and mortar store without as much overhead. You still need to focus on providing great customer service. So if you see a message from someone and they're asking whatever question it might be, try and get answers within a day. And when that item you list sells, ship it fast. I personally try to ship items within 2 to 3 business days, but ultimately it really goes back to depending on what you're selling and your business model, you may have a different time frame. And that's pretty much it. One weekend to go from zero to live listings. The hardest part is starting, and now you have a plan to do that. And as I mentioned, the goal isn't perfection, it's momentum. Price items to move, get those sales in, and then you can use that knowledge to drive even more volume. I see in the chat a couple of great questions. What the first one is, what is your opinion of the promoted listing option on eBay? And the question two is, do you have AI write the listing for you? The first question, I'm an eBay employee, so I have to be very conscious of how I phrase things. But I will say, from my personal, absolutely speaking, personal opinion, I feel promoted listings on eBay is very useful because it allows me to move inventory quickly. And eBay does tell you how much money you get from sales for every dollar spent. So right now for me, I average about $11 for every $1 I spend on eBay ads. But promoted listings, it really varies based on what you're selling. If there's a lot of competitors, if there's a lot of interest. I think if you're doing something like really niche collectibles where it's a very unique item, you might not need to promote as much. But for something like clothing where there's a lot of competition, promoted listings is a bit of a very invaluable tool. But it really just depends on what works for you. Second question, do I have AI write the listing? I have AI help me with portions of the listing. So, for example, I don't have it up right now, but in Gemini, which I use a lot for creating my eBay listings, I ask it for what are the item specifics? What is the title for this listing? Um, so a lot of the things on eBay, for example, they ask you item specifics like collar type, fabric, knit style, measurements, and so on. So I do have Gemini or Claude. It will provide me things like this is a knit fabric, or this is embroidered shirt, or something like that. So AI isn't doing the entire listing for me. It's augmenting my knowledge and helping me fill in the blanks. And this brings me to the final part of the webinar. And now that you've seen what AI provides, you've seen how it identifies the items, catches the condition issues, helps with prices, and helps to create listings. All of this is the surface, the demos, and the concepts of AI and reselling. Something that I couldn't get into is the depth of the prompts, the thinking, the frameworks for different categories, methods for finding inventory, and automations to speed things up. You can definitely try and build your own AI system and definitely mix and match the prompts and so on. And this knowledge can get you far. But one of the things about learning to resell is that there's just so much trial and error. And like I mentioned, when I first started reselling back in 2021, I had I easily lost a couple $100 on returns and refunds because of mistakes I made. And with the AI prompts and so on, it's easy to just try writing prompts that give generic outputs, and then you're wondering, why isn't it giving specific details that I'm looking for? And ultimately, it can end up listing items, missing details, and learning the hard way about why it's about being very particular with listing. And all this course, I know these challenges because I lived it. I spent months, even years, even today, I'm still learning how to improve my reselling. And ultimately, it's a continuous process on knowing how to ask AI, how to apply those outputs, and just getting momentum from the ground up. So This course, Reselling Guide AI, it's not just a collection of AI prompts. It's a shortcut to show you how to integrate AI into your workflow. So you're not just getting a list of prompts you're plugging in, you're understanding how to weave that into your reselling, whether you're selling antiques, clothing, electronics. It's designed to get you thinking and into that mindset so you can really hit the ground running. And within Reselling Guide AI, it's a growing course. And when you join, you get everything that exists today, plus everything moving forward. And let me So it's a growing course. It's continuously being updated. And right now we have the AI fundamentals, identifying what you have in your home, understanding values, knowing what matters detail wise, evaluating potential inventory with sourcing and inventory evaluation tips, know customer service tutorials, handling tricky buyer messages, navigating difficult conversations, building an AI reselling assistant to be an ongoing tool to streamline all the different prompts that I provided here, and also an overview of using AI for pricing strategies, expanding into new categories, and scaling your business. I know we're just about at time, so I will close up. That's pretty much the pitch for the course. I will share out all the prompts provided by email after this webinar, and if there's any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I can stay a little over if needed.
All right. Good information as usual, Charles. We'll be taking
Yep.
any questions here for a little bit. Um, Andrea says, what is your opinion of the promoted listing option on eBay?
Oh, yes, I did just go over that before.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you
Yeah.
answered that already.
But yes, again, short answer is my opinion is that is very useful. Whether it's a fit for you, it really depends on the margins in your business model.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Heather says, thank you. I appreciated this and will consider the course. Excellent.
Glad to hear I could add value.
And for those of you who are considering the course, it's literally buy once and enjoy the updates for the rest of its life. Um, yeah. Anybody else? Is everybody excited to get started? Who's rummaging through their house tonight and
I
tomorrow to see what they can sell for the weekend? What if you are traveling? There you go. There's a
Yes,
question.
that's a great question. And I do travel a lot. So eBay actually has, so Poshmark, Macari, eBay, Depop, they all have their own iteration of what's called vacation mode. And what this is, depending on the marketplace, sometimes you can make sales while you are away. Sometimes the marketplace will block off your store. So, for example, on eBay, if I'm traveling for a week, I can go into my settings and say, I am away for X to Y. And eBay will, in the listing, it does say something like seller is away, shipping may be delayed. So eBay does have you covered. And you do have the option to make sales and ship when you return, or you can block sales. Macari and Poshmark both have a similar mode, but what they do is they just close up your store and they say seller is away and they will return on X. And until that mode is disabled, um, then the listings are unavailable for purchase. So, but generally, all the different reselling sites should have some version of what is called vacation mode. And I see in the chat the link isn't working. I may be having server issues. Let me try.
If you have the Gumroad link on its own, then
I
just
think you
drop that
need
in
to
there.
add the www. So I did just put that. For the website, for some reason, it looks like I need to check the server. But if the link doesn't work, just add www and
There we
then
go.
it should be fine.
Yep. And then you can enter in the code, I think, right? Click I want this, and then type in Albert 650. Excellent. Yep. That drops it down. Cool. Okay. Any other additional questions for those who are interested? I know I've got so much stuff in my house. I might just start this weekend myself. All right. If there are
Oh,
no other,
and
Mhm.
so my email, charles at resellingguide.ai. Feel free to email me if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer them.
All right. Wonderful. Well, Charles, thank you so much again for your time today. We appreciate it. And for those of
Thank
you who
you.
just spent an hour with us, we appreciate your time too, especially as you know you have many different choices for side hustles. And there are a few side hustles like this that don't really require startup cost and literally just require you to look around your house. We have so many other webinars, and Charles will be also following up. We have so many other webinars on our way. Look at our Eventbrite calendar for what's coming up. And we look forward to seeing all of you very soon. Best of luck with your side hustle. We look forward to hearing about your successes, and we will see you all soon. Have a wonderful day or evening wherever you may be, and goodbye.